Alrighty, folks, the moment you've all been waiting for, or not, as the case may be. So, just a couple of things. I'm sitting here in this, because it is a blazing gazillion degrees out here. So, hell hath broken open, and not only are the demons loose, but they brought the heat with them. So, a couple of things. You know, the month of July, as I'm sure you guys are all very aware, is a very, very busy month. Oh my God. And by the way, it is July 4th here in the United States. Happy birthday, America. And happy belated birthday, Canada. You guys had Canada Day a little, with July 1st, I think. And you've got Justin Trudeau. I'm so jealous. Anyway, so we've got a bunch of stuff going on. So this month, we have a 20-degree Cancer eclipse and we have a 4-degree Aquarius eclipse. Now, for all intents and appearances, the 20-degree Cancer eclipse would look to be the worse one, or the heavier one, right? You know, because Pluto's involved. But Pluto can get a bit of a bad rap. And Pluto is not obvious. So one of the things to understand about the Cancer eclipse is that it is not that simple. There's, for some people, it's going to be a really good eclipse. It's going to help propel things forward and give them a lot of support, you know, from the universe and cosmos, kind of push them towards their future and their destiny. And for other people, it's going to be, you know, quite problematic, as eclipses can be. On a larger scale, this particular eclipse, because it is in the sign of Cancer and it is involving the planet Pluto very, very closely, one of the things to also remember is that the moon and Pluto are both feminine signs. So, you know, we're going right back to this business about the rise of the feminine, and the return of the queen back to her throne, you know, and her rightful place. So, you know, this is very much about, you know, masculine and feminine energies having an equal seat at the table and not one, you know, dominating the other, as it has been for entirely too long. Because you see what happens when you leave the boys in charge and no one keeps them in check. Like, they treat everybody like they're their mother, and not in the best ways. So one of the things that we're going to see with this particular Cancer eclipse is, again, you know, the continued rise of the feminine, into positions of power, and also in terms of changing the playing field, because Pluto is very much about changing the playing field. Okay. The other thing, remember, because Pluto is subtle, Pluto is not an in-your-face kind of thing. So these are, if you could imagine, in earth sciences, when you were very little, one of the things I talked about is how the earth is shaped, and you've got these land masses underneath us, especially in the oceans. And sometimes they move. They're kind of like the plates in your skull where they all kind of meet together, and there's what they call tectonic shifts. So sometimes those land masses that we're all resting on kind of shift and move, and that's where we get these earthquakes. So earthquakes may be a possibility, but that's, you know, we're a little late for the party for that, because we've already been having earthquakes for a while now. But it is very much that same idea that there's something shifting from very, very deep in the foundation on which we built everything. And we may be feeling this only as disruptively as like a momentary quake, like, whoa, wait, what the hell just happened, kind of thing, because there's a tectonic shift in the foundation that we stand on. So for some signs, it's going to be very good. For other signs, it's going to be extremely problematic and complicated. We'll talk about that in a second. So the other eclipse, and this is the one that I want you guys to pay attention to, because this is one I think that's very important, right? And this is the interesting one, is the Aquarius eclipse at 4 Aquarius. Now, this particular eclipse is a whopper, like, oh my God, it's a whopper. And not because it's necessarily involving any huge planets. I mean, this particular eclipse only involves Mars retrograde. And Mars, when it's retrograde, tends to be weaker, right, as in action, because it's Mars' nature is to go forward and do. And retrograde, anything that is retrograde, it is held back and in check and restrained, right? So if you could imagine having a great warrior, you know, being straitjacketed, or having a baby strapped to them, and now they've got to go figure out how to do this. It's a little complicated. So Mars is in a weaker, not weakened, weaker state than it normally is, and it's the only outside planet necessarily that's involved in this this eclipse pattern. So it doesn't seem, and Mercury's retrograde, right? So it doesn't seem like it would be anything more than an inconvenience, right? I mean, if you were just going to use cookbook astrology to do, that kind of thing, it looks like it would be an inconvenience. However, here's what's interesting about this particular eclipse. This Aquarius eclipse gets activated multiple times. So it's not a one and done sort of thing. The eclipse in Aquarius is going to do a couple of things. The first thing is when it activates at the end of the month, when it is officially an eclipse, it activates instantly. All right. So whatever we're getting with it, we're getting with it, kabam, like it's laid on the table at the time of the eclipse. We don't have to wait for it to happen. However, and this is why it gets weird. So before that happens, we're actually getting that eclipse activated a little bit early. So we're getting a preview of some of the stuff we can expect with this. And it gets activated at least twice afterwards, simultaneously around other eclipses. Now, I know there are some schools of thought that say that, you can't, eclipses have to run in succession. So if you've got one eclipse going and it finishes out, then the other eclipse gets activated. But I don't necessarily agree. I think in this particular case, you can have just like ripples in a pond. You can have both eclipses, being activated around the same time span, like within weeks of each other. They don't cancel each other out. Like, we're not that simple. So there's all sorts of stuff happening simultaneously. So just to give you an idea of what we're talking about, this 4-degree Aquarius eclipse would have been activated July 2nd or 3rd. And some of you may have seen this firsthand. And because literally you would have been standing going, what on earth is going on out there? Like, is there a full moon? Right. This eclipse brings to us a lot of destabilization and a lot of unstable energy and a lot of extremes, but these are like psychological and emotional extremes. So what you're getting is, and it is because there's a fixed star called Dabi involved, and because it's Moon and Mars retrograde, and it's Mercury and Leo retrograde. Oh my God. So what we're going to get are a lot of people who, if they were previously a little unstable, they're going to be a lot more unstable. If they were previously angry, they're going to be a lot more angry. If they were previously fearful, they're going to be a lot more afraid. Like, anything that people are feeling or experiencing or walking around with in their head, magnified 1,000 times, right? So it's different from a full moon. So a full moon is just this emotional kind of like rising to the top of all this lunacy inside us, right? Because we can't quite handle it. It's very irrational sort of stuff, right? Over the top emotional expression. This eclipse pattern is not that. This eclipse pattern strikes at something so very fundamental and very deep in so many people, that literally it's all this frustration and this rage because this particular eclipse pattern involves a retrograde Mars, and retrograde Mars and Moon is there. So the Moon is the feelings, and retrograde Mars is about feelings of being obstructed and frustrated and having people stand in your way, and just constantly feeling like you're running up against obstacle after obstacle after obstacle. So that sense of frustration and obstruction that other people are feeling in terms of getting on with their lives, like that is what's like brewing to the top, like a coffee pot boiling over. Okay, so you can imagine, like, this is some serious stuff. With this, one of the other things, and with a Moon Mars together by itself, you get a lot of over-the-top impulsive action, right? So there's a lot of, shoot first, ask questions later, all right? With it in sign of Aquarius, which is already by nature impulsive, and squaring Uranus in Taurus, which just went into Taurus. And now we're getting a taste of this Uranus and Taurus like destabilization, like we need more chaos in our lives. This really drives home the point, or the energy, right, of people acting in a less than rational or reasonable manner, just these outbursts, okay, and because Leo, Taurus, and Aquarius are involved, there's going to be a whole lot of people taking themselves up very seriously and expecting you to take them just as seriously. And if you don't, they are so going to throw their weight around. Okay. So, because the thing to remember is it's a little weird side thing, right? So with the fixed signs, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, with those 4 signs, dude, these guys take themselves very seriously. Now, if you are one of those signs, you're probably going to disagree with me. But for all of you who know somebody who's a Taurus, a Leo, a Scorpio, and Aquarius, you know they take themselves very seriously and they don't like it when you don't take them seriously. So this Moon Mars conjunction in Aquarius, squaring Uranus and Taurus, opposing the Sun in Leo, is really pushing all those self-important buttons. Do you know who I am? Do you know who I am? Like that kind of like outburst, right? So this need for recognition and feeling important or powerful, and possibly in inappropriate situations where literally it's not normal, rational, right? Because they feel like they have lost all power and influence and status everywhere else in their lives because they're constantly being obstructed and frustrated. Like this is where it's coming to. So I would expect a lot of just bizarre, like, you know, like chest beating in some really unexpected, bizarre places. I really feel for people who are in services or in jobs where you are service people for the general public, because the wackadoodle is going to be out in force. I mean, Jesus, the retail, food service, you know, anybody who does anything where you are basically serving other people, be mindful that these guys, like, and you get these guys all the time, I know, but they're coming out of the woods right now, and they're way over the top. Like, oh my God. I got a story about that. So there's that. Now, the other thing is that this particular eclipse pattern, it sets up a tight T-square, but it is also going to move into its a little, see, remember, I like my orbs tight, right? So for me, it's not a grand cross yet, all right? But it's just within orbs. So one of the things that I think is going to happen with this particular eclipse is not only are we going to see the outburst from people, this explosion from people, this insanity, right? Watch the clock or the calendar and see if see if it's not over. See, typically when people have these blow ups, these outbursts, it's over once they've done it, right? We've all had those tantrums, right? You know, and we're sorry afterwards, and I'm so sorry. It was a bad day, and blah blah blah. You know, the whole kick the dog thing. And we once we've discharged that energy, like we realize what a jerk we were, and you know, it's over. We let it go. Like, let's not go there again, right? But this particular eclipse pattern, because that grand cross sitting in the chart is a little bit delayed, because the moon will approach it, and the moon has to cross Mars to get to it, and it's a couple degrees out. So one of the things that's going to happen is whatever the initial like boom depth charge is, wait and like literally start counting the clock, right? And see how long it is before the second wave comes in, because it will not be a one-time explosion. What you're going to have is an outburst followed by a small delay or a pause, right? Where it looks like, okay, we're good. We're out of the woods. Things are clear. And then the real like problem, okay? Because they're not done yet, right? And just to give you guys an example of what I'm talking about, maybe this will make more sense, right? Have you ever known these people who, like, not only do they have the outbursts and they're abusive and like, do you know who I am? And blah, 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 because they're so filled with self-importance and you clearly weren't bending over backwards fast enough to accommodate them, you know, and, right? So you get all of that done. Somebody intervenes. We get this all de-escalated. Everything's calm now. We think we've, you know, gotten a solution on our hand. Okay, thank you very much. Have a nice day. You know, there's the door. Please don't ever come back. Dear God, get some therapy, right? And we go on about our lives. We think, all right, we're good. We're you know, we put the fire out. The crisis is over. We can go back to what we're doing, right? And then a couple days later, you've got a higher up, right? One of the higher executives or something coming down like a hammer, like, you know, last week, did you guys have somebody that blah, 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 like, you know, and you're like, wait, what? And it gets, that whole thing gets reopened, and only now somebody gets fired, right? Or, you know, horrible policies are put in place to address this problem or whatever, because whoever this person was that started the stink in the first place, even though they calmed down initially, they apparently weren't satisfied with the response. So they escalated it and made it a bigger problem higher up. And now it's coming back a couple of days later or a couple of weeks later, and it's rearing its ugly head again. Only now we're getting to see like the real like level of devastation this person was intending with their tantrum. This, I don't mean to panic you guys, but this is what we're dealing with. So what I'm telling you is this: if you are in a position where you have to deal with the public in a service function. And I don't care if you were a police officer, an ambulance driver, a waitress, you know, a retail clerk at the cash register. I don't care what your job is. If you're in a position where you have to provide a service to someone else, which essentially makes you at that moment their servant, okay? I want you guys to be very aware of the dynamics we're dealing with for the entire month, because this literally, the people who pop like popcorn are going to go off, and it's all about their need to feel important and their image of self-importance. And when ego is involved, ego doesn't rest. So you want to handle this from the very beginning as diplomatically as possible, because they won't be done. You'll have the outbursts, they're going to calm down, they're going to walk away, and they're going to come back, because this is what we've got all month with this particular thing. And then we're going to see like how much damage that they're really intending to do. So, yay. So this is what we're dealing with this particular eclipse. Now, the thing about it, remember, is it gets activated multiple times. It was activated July 2nd or 3rd. So go back and think to July 2nd or 3rd, which was what, yesterday and the day before? You know, for any kind of bizarre, weird, like outbursts from people or unexpected things like, whoa, you know, kind of thing. And that's your preview of the kind of stuff, like personalities that we're dealing with. It will get activated again at the end of the month when the eclipse occurs. And because God's a comedian, it will get activated again in August and September, like the second week of September. So we're not out of the woods yet. We're going to be dealing with this right up into like the second week of September, while we've got two other different eclipses happening at the same time. So this does not mean you should panic. Do not panic. It does mean you should be prepared, okay? And, you know, maybe, you know, walk around some, you know, a tranquilizer dart gun or something. Otherwise, it's going to be a very eventful summer, or at least it should be. One of the things that's very important, and I think this is happening globally, because I caught up, the New York Times is reading, which is better than my local paper, about covering what's going on in the world. So apparently this you know, this anxiety and angst and the wackadoodles kind of taken over, it's global. So there's a shift to the conservative right globally everywhere. So some things to consider when this is happening. So when we talk about the conservative right in any country, okay, typically what we're talking about are people whose primary goal and priority is about conserving resources. So we don't think about conserving resources unless we are afraid that we're going to run out of them, okay, or unless we feel that we are already so challenged that we don't have enough of them to begin with to share, right? So this isn't to say that they're all selfish, but it is to say that at this particular time, this mass kind of like, you know, seesaw back and forth between the stingy conservatives and the, you know, bleeding heart liberals, if you want to use those, you know, descriptions. A lot of this has to do with fear versus faith, right? So people who are coming from a place of fear are afraid they don't have enough to go around. You know, I'm sorry, I'd love to help you, but I can't. I have to think of me and mine first, and we don't have enough to share. And then people who are coming from a place of faith will share their last can of beans with you, you know, because it's not much. And, you know, this isn't really enough for everybody here as is, but listen, we are all struggling. So it's not going to make us struggle anymore to share with you too. So that's a lot of what's going on right now. So fear is a driving factor right now in a lot of decisions for people who are shifting more towards conservative, tight-fisted sort of things. We will get through this. We will get through this. But again, I've been saying this over and over and over again, we have to act on these things. We don't get to sit around and gaze our navels and, you know, wish these things into non-existence. We have to participate in the process of making it better. And I don't mean participate by sitting around, you know, visualizing a better future. We really need to get out and do stuff. Sorry, it's like a bazillion degrees over here. So, and the other thing, if you can't do anything, like there are just, because listen, life happens. Sometimes we just can't do as much as we'd like to do. One of the most important things that everybody across the board has to do, whether you're physically actively participating in these processes, whether you're an activist or you're involved in politics or even getting out and voting, or, you know, working at shelters, or you're unable to do all of those things because you're already stretched so thin just trying to survive that you literally don't have the time or the resources extra to give to anything else. Wherever you are on the spectrum, the most important thing for all of us is we need to check in with ourselves at every opportunity and ask ourselves, am I coming from a place of fear? Am I coming from a place of ego? Are my decisions being driven by panic about some impending possible doom in the future? Because if that is the case, that is the wrong decision, right? So we need to check in with ourselves and get in touch with our fears and our concerns, and we need to be honest with ourselves about where we're coming from and address that rather than, refusing to deal with other people and all that sort of stuff. There's an easy way and a hard way. There's high road and low road. There's all sorts of ways to get stuff done. And this isn't to say that any of us, who practice astrology and know all of this stuff are any better at it. Like, this is an ongoing process for us as well. So hang in there, and by all means, like, this time you got to hunker down. You really have to think like a metaphysician, and you got to think like a smart person. You've got to handle your situations because other people will be popping in and out unexpectedly and definitely giving you situations to handle, whether you want to or not. So now here's my story about this insane, unstable, oh my God, the itching, right? This unstable energy that we're looking at all through summer. And this is not helped by the fact that we have major heat because it's summertime in many places, because the heat will make people mean. So July 2nd or 3rd, I don't remember what it was. It was 7 o'clock in the morning. I hadn't been at work an hour because, so you guys know, I mean, obviously I work for a living because I have to have medical insurance, among other things. And it's good to be out and participating in the world so I don't lose perspective on how difficult things are around here. So I'm in it with you, and I'm good with that. There's reasons for this. But all of this is to say that I was at work at 7 o'clock in the morning. I had not been at this job an hour, literally less than an hour. I'm at this job. I'm standing doing something. I've got my back turned to where the customers come in, right? And I've got 3 coworkers. One's in the back. The other 2 are standing there facing the area that I've got my back to. So they see what's going on. I can't see anything, or at least in theory. And so I'm standing there working on something, and the next sound I hear, wait for it, ready? The next sound I hear is literally the sound of a woman shouting at the top of her lungs. I'm not exaggerating. Literally, she was shouting angrily at the top of her lungs, like she was trying to start a bar fight, right? Excuse me, a little acknowledgement would be nice here. I am trying to make an order, right? So imagine someone screaming this. Now, here's the important thing about this. So, if this were a situation where there were 1,000 people in the cafe and nobody could hear her, screaming would make sense. Shouting would make sense, right? If this were a situation where she were so far back from where we were standing that you needed to shout to make sure that we heard her, this would make sense. No, her shouting at the top of her lungs. I'm not exaggerating. This was so bizarre. Like, at the top of her lungs. She was 2.5 feet away from me. I could have taken 2 steps and gotten to where she was. And in that little teeny tiny bit of difference, she felt the overwhelming need to let us know how offended she was that we did not acknowledge the importance of her visage in our presence by being angry and shouting at us at the top of her lungs. So, I went over and I'm just like, I'm so sorry. I don't have because, I have difficulty minding my mouth sometimes, because I'm a grown woman. Like, you need to stop. Lady, just stop already, and and this job is not that important to me. Like, seriously. So anyway, I'm like, listen, I'm so sorry. I don't have eyes in the back of my head. I had no idea you were standing there. I didn't realize you were behind me. So let me help you with this, right? Get her taken care of. She starts calming down. She realizes she's been an ass, right? And then leaves. I'm so sorry. I'm like, no, it's fine. Here, just go. And in my head, I'm thinking, please go and never come back, right? And as soon as she walks out the door, literally there are only 3 customers in the entire space. 3 at 7 o'clock in the morning, and this woman is screaming at the top of her lungs because we're not paying attention to her. This other guy he was miserable when I walked in. Like, he was there when I got there, and he was just a miserable old man, right? I think he's got erectile dysfunction. Some of these guys with erectile dysfunction, they're just mean, right? Not all of them, but some of them, oh, just mean. It's like, yeah, you deserve that. Anyway, he was miserable when I walked in, so I didn't know what his problem was. So now, of course, she's gone after having her little, screaming episode, right? And he gets his stuff. And then, of course, now he decides that this perfectly acceptable and appropriate for him to go popping off. And he's like, oh, excuse me, this is wrong. And now he's being abusive, right? Literally, because he feels like, I guess he can get away with it. So the thing about it, and the reason I'm telling you this story is because it's very important we handle these situations, because right now, with all of this destabilizing energy and people being like, I'm important and you're going to recognize it. Because they're frustrated in their lives and they're panicked, they're angry, they're afraid. There's a whole lot of negative stuff because they're not in a great place, because nobody's in a great place right now. It's all kind of bubbling the surface and it's going to explode all over everybody else. The problem is, like popcorn kernels in a popcorn bag. If you get one popping off, it's only a matter of seconds before all the other kernels in the bag start popping off with it. And then next thing you know, you got a whole bag full of kernels going pop, 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 pop. In a room full of people or in a group of people, imagine you've got one lunatic going off because they're so full of self-importance and they need you to acknowledge how important they are, right? And now everybody else, like, it's contagious, and everybody else in the room decides, oh, well, screw this, man. Like, you're going to pay attention to me too. And now they're all going off, right? And literally this will turn into a mob scene very quickly. And not with gangsters and thugs, most likely with, suburbanites, that feel like they're really being devalued and dismissed because their jobs are not important. They're part of the corporate machine, blah, 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 blah. And so when you're in public service, you're the easy target. So I don't want you guys to end up on the receiving end of a suburban mob. The polo shirts and tiki torches. Anyway, so when these situations occur, try to de-escalate them as quickly as possible, remain as neutral and cool and professional as possible. And remember, it's not over. It's not over, because there's this delay before that grand cross officially gets triggered in this particular eclipse pattern. So anytime this eclipse gets activated, whatever we're seeing with it, count 1, 2, literally do the countdown 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, because the last part of this eclipse, which is going to be the closing out of that grand cross, will occur on a delay timer, right? So we can expect something to come with that, or as part and parcel with that, a little bit later, by a couple of days or a couple of weeks. So now that I'm saying this, I'm realizing that whatever was going on with these two, right, this insane woman and this nasty old man, I'm sure that I'm going to be hearing about this sooner or later. Like, there's more fallout coming from this in a few days. So, and I go back to work, my schedule, I go back to work in a couple of days. So it will be interesting to see what this is about. I'm not looking forward to this. I handled this as best I could. I actually ended up going home because I knew I was going to lose my cool, and it was going to get ugly because, yeah. I'm good. I have a Mars, Uranus, Pluto conjunction, so it's not good. So I really try to avoid situations where I'm being pushed in the corners, back in the corners. So too much information about me. Anyway, so this is what we're dealing with. And like I said, remember, July 2nd and 3rd, we got a preview of it. We're going to see the eclipse at the end of July when it occurs. And then we're still getting shockwaves from this as it gets reactivated 2 more times in August and then September. So hang in there, for God's sakes. And remember, people are coming from a lot of places, fear, frustration, blah, 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 feeling like they're obstructed, and people are actively working to not let them move forward in their lives. But the killing blow in this particular eclipse pattern is the ego. A lot of ego in here. A lot of you will take me seriously. And when people are coming from ego, having these kinds of like explosions, it's the worst kind, because when you come from ego, you can't have empathy. So people who are coming from ego have no sense of limitation in terms of how much they're hurting you, because they don't feel it. It's all ego, right? So try not to be that person, and be aware that this is, what we're up against for a little while. All right. So, and don't mean to panic yet. This is all to prepare you so you can kind of navigate. All right. So, hi. Oh, she's in New Zealand. Yay. Exciting. All right. So, you guys are here with me in the room. Welcome. And so I'm going to open the floor. Do you guys have any questions? And we can kind of, go over some stuff that way. Or I can pull cards or whatever. Like, it's just open chat this morning before I go and start my holiday here in, America. Oh. Oh, while I'm waiting for you guys to start talking, a couple of other things. I did go over the eclipses in a lot more depth. This is housekeeping stuff right here, with the commercial break in the middle of the program. I did these horoscopes in a lot more depth. They are on my Patreon page. There will be a Patreon link in the comments or in the profile later under this live stream. If you're looking for it, you can go to Patreon, Patreon.com. Apparently where all the cool astrologers are going now, because they've all found out about it. And look for Primal Girl Wellness there. So it's $1 a month, and it gives you access to the horoscopes and stuff that we're putting up. And like, it's $12 a year. Like, you buy 2 cups of coffee at Starbucks. Well, you buy 1 cup of coffee at Starbucks. You buy 2 cups of coffee in a year for $12. And you're getting a whole lot of information. What that does is help support me get all this stuff done, because this is a lot of time and work and energy to put this stuff together for you guys. So it's not, we make it look easy, but it's not. So there's that. And we are putting together for the members, for the Patreon members, we are starting an Astrology 101 class. So we're going to go through astrology the way I understand it. And this is for beginners to intermediates. Advanced astrologers probably won't get a lot out of it. But other folks will definitely get something out of it. Beginners will have a different perspective on how to learn this stuff without getting into technical stuff so heavily. You'll need to know that stuff, but that's not the primary focus. And intermediate folks will be able to deepen their practice and become much more proficient at being counselors, and really getting the subtleties of astrology without using the cookbook interpretations. Okay. People with Aquarius, Saturn, Moon conjunctions, ooh, good Lord, will be affected. Yikes. Wow. Okay, so people who have planets at 4 degrees, right, of Aquarius, Leo, Taurus, and Scorpio will absolutely get hit the hardest with this, because the eclipse is right on that degree. So if your sun has a Moon Saturn conjunction at anywhere from 3 to 6, remember, we like them tight. 3 to 5 Aquarius. One of the things that I would look for in this particular case is, hang on, I need to think about this for a second, because Uranus is squaring it in Taurus. So some of the things I would be mindful of, if he is prone to any type of neurological issues, these are really going to flare up at this time. If he does not already have a neurological issue, one of the things that I would absolutely say to guard against is to be very, very careful with injuries, because the propensity for inflammation and much more significant or exaggerated trauma as a result of even simple injuries is heightened at this time. Now, and this is where it gets tricky, because what we have to do is we also have to look at where in the chart, in which houses this eclipse pattern is falling, to help us kind of pinpoint where things are going. So, but we can still get some information just looking at the planetary pictures. So with a Moon-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius, assuming that it's near the degree of the eclipse, if this is the case, I would look for some issues in or around the house, and especially dealing with women or older women. So if he has a grandmother, for whatever reason, she might become something that is an issue, or a step mother or step sister, a step relative, somebody who's a female who's related by marriage, or yeah. So I mean, at this point, I'm literally fishing, because I'm not sure where this falls in his chart. But there are a number of different ways to go. But so if he doesn't have planets at those degrees, at that degree, around 4 degrees, he should be good. Everybody's feeling it, but it's not going to be nearly as overwhelming as it would be if he were taking an exact hit. Okay. All right. Debbie, that's a great question. And I would love to, because daily forecasts are actually a lot of fun, and they're really, they're a lot simpler to do, because it's literally snapshots day by day by day. Unfortunately, for 12 signs, every day, it's a little bit time consuming, and I'm not in that position yet. So if I had enough Patreon subscribers, I'm not plugging my Patreon page, I'm just saying, like, realistically, if I had enough Patreon subscribers to support the cause, so that I didn't have to work as much at my other job and I could reduce my hours there, I could focus on this and make it available, certainly. And you know me, like I love to talk and over explain things. But until that happens, we're kind of, doing what we're doing right now, catch as catch can, which, I know it's a little inconvenient, kind of like the boyfriend that shows up when he feels like it. um, but that's kind of where we're at right now. So there's that. And Emily says, eclipses to me, I'm thinking she's meaning eclipses have me confused. Hearing two different scenarios for them. Some say intense, deep, others. Some say light and good. Friend has moon in 7th, conjunct to the July 13th eclipse. That's a great question, Emily. And again, on the Patreon page, we go into the Cancer eclipse a lot. So here's the thing with the Cancer eclipse that's interesting. And the reason we spent so much time on this Aquarius eclipse is because this Aquarius eclipse is like the mother of all eclipses. Well, not really, but it just feels like it. The Cancer eclipse is a little bit more complicated because for some people, it's going to do really good things. For other people, it's going to be not so good. And still for others, it's going to go by like a blip in the night. Like it's, whatever, what, we had an eclipse. So depending on which signs, because, all right, the Cancer eclipse is a T-square formation, right? And the open leg of the T-square, so imagine like a T, right? Imagine you have a T shape, right? And the open leg of that T square is where all this energy is going to get funneled through, which will be in the sign Libra. So the sign Libra is where we can expect a lot of this activity. So, but the thing about it is because this particular T square, okay, which is Cancer, Capricorn, it's 20 Cancer, Capricorn, and it's involving Pluto in Capricorn. It's a little bit more tricky. So it's good and it's bad and it's completely indifferent depending on where you're receiving it in your chart. And I would love to give you more information about that, but literally we're going to be like, I wrote the whole thing out about those Cancer eclipses and how it affects who and by houses and signs. And it took me 3 hours to do that. So if I try to do this on the video, it's going to take me at least 2 hours to get into that. So if you're interested in more information about that, you can go to my Patreon page. You can subscribe for the month. It's $1 and you'll have access to that information. But yeah, so there's a lot of literally kind of across the map sort of effects of the Cancer eclipse. So it may be good, it may be bad, depending on where you're taking it in your chart. And I'm sorry, I don't have a more specific general answer. Unfortunately, it's not like the Aquarius eclipse where we know exactly what's going on and everybody's getting it. Okay. Oh, Cam. Okay, so all right. So with that said, I would just keep a close eye on him while we're going through this eclipse. And remember, your hotspots for this Aquarius eclipse, that may or may not impact him intensely or more than other planetary transits right now, should have been July 2nd or 3rd. Again, around the 27th, whenever the eclipse actually occurs. I'm sorry, I don't have my ephemeris in front of me. And again in August. I think it's like mid-August, and then the second week of September. So if you can get that information, it's on my Patreon page. But if you can get that information, you just want to mark out those days or weeks in your calendar so you can keep a closer eye on him at that time. Well, then, Eva, you'll be happy to know that all this information is on the Patreon page. Yes, thank God he's not carrying degrees, like his personal planets at those degrees. So, because, geez, wow, that would be complicated. That would be complicated. But so forewarned is forearmed. So we know. So since he's not carrying those planets at those degrees or the moon Saturn at those degrees, one of the things that I would probably just do is recommend that you keep a closer eye on him. Because inflammation and neurological things are really going to kind of like come to the surface. So any issues or whatever, or complications or problems with that, like it's going to be more at the forefront than usual. And also too, it is entirely possible that any type of injury and stuff will just be a lot more problematic than normal. So we just keep a close eye on it and pay attention. Oh, sorry. All right. Any other questions? Ugh, it is going to be so blistering hot. I'm so not okay. I don't like the cold. I don't like the heat. I'm like an old person. I just want it to be nice all the time. So, okay, well, let me ask you this while I've got you guys in a room, because I'm kind of interested in this. So, thinking back, that's a great question, Patricia. Let me ask this question. I'm going to answer yours. So thinking back to yesterday and the day before, July 2nd or 3rd, have you guys had any experiences that were completely unexpected or just bizarre? Like, whoa, where did that come from? Sort of stuff. And if you did, please share. And they don't always necessarily have to be bad, although with this eclipse activation, I just don't see how it could have possibly been anything fun. Comical maybe, but certainly not necessarily fun. All right. So, what do you recommend for people having an eclipse in the 12th house? And that, well, so Patricia, before I answer that, it depends on which eclipse we're talking about. So, because we're taking the energy of the eclipse and we're putting it in the houses of our chart. Sorry, looks like I have acne. So with the Cancer eclipse, we've covered that. That is definitely covered in the Patreon page, and we talk about that by house. And there's some very special stuff that goes on with Cancer eclipse for people who take it through their 12th house. For the Aquarius eclipse, I didn't get too much into the specifics about houses with an Aquarius eclipse because it is such the Aquarius eclipse is such what it is that no matter where it's placed in the houses in our charts, like it's just going to be awkward and uncomfortable and like literally crisis control for everybody across the board. So I'm not sure which eclipse you're referring to, so it makes it a little bit difficult for me to answer that question. What about the upcoming meeting with Trump and Putin? You know, I am so tired of this orangutan in office. See, and I thought it was the 16th. Did they move it to the 16th? Let me pull this up real quick while I'm talking to you guys. I'm so tired of this. And it's not just him, it's also the Congress that literally enables him and lets him get away with this stuff. It's got to stop. It's just got to stop. And the news is tightening, or at least that's what they tell us. It's July 16th. Okay. Okay, so the eclipse in the middle of the month is the 20-degree Cancer eclipse. It's complicated, and how you're going to feel this literally depends on what houses you're taking it in, because it's literally everywhere from really good to really not great. And that would be the new moon solar eclipse, or that would be the new moon solar eclipse. That would be the Cancer eclipse that you're talking about, Patricia. And for people who are carrying it or feeling it through the 12th house, it's actually really good. So there's also good stuff with that. And do eclipses ever eclipse in, or is it just out? So Emily, I don't understand the question. So you'll have to clarify that a little bit for me, because I'm not understanding what you're asking. As far as the Trump and Putin meeting and this country and our president and the Congress and the powers that be that run this thing, I don't. So I am not a poli-sci major in college, so I don't have enough. And honestly, these days, it really feels like you have to have a degree to keep up with this stuff, right? Because it's so complicated. So I don't have enough background in political science to make as much detailed and thorough examination of all of these things and what it entails as I would like to. But the whole Trump-Putin meeting is not any better or worse than everything else that's underneath the surface. So remember, and this may be where this business about tectonic plates and this Cancer eclipse come into play, because there's so much already in existence underneath this meeting. This is literally just like the decorations on a cake. there's a long history here. There's a lot of deep root foundations between them and their relationship with each other. There's a lot going on that we don't see, you know, because it's just covered by layers and layers and layers of other stuff. So I don't know that this particular meeting is spectacular as much as it is one more erosion of authority for the United States as being a democratic, independent country, especially after we've pretty much just tipped our hat and validated North Korea, you know, and its dictators, you know, as being somebody respect worthy and, you know, important enough to be taken seriously. And now we're going to Russia to meet with Putin as opposed to him coming here for we don't even know why. And while all of this is still in the middle of an investigation about them meddling with our election. And don't you kid yourself, Russians do not love us. They do not love us. They are literally, if you're an American, if you've ever been like down in the South with some of the good old boys, right? And you know how, like, there's this mentality, right? It's like, well, you know, like, let me tell you something. I don't care what damn Ruskies do. Like, we do it better. Like, all them damn foreigners, like, oh, no, like, we're America. You know, we, right? Like, so you know what I'm talking about. If you've been down south, you've heard and had these conversations, right? And it's not a bad thing. It's just this is what you get when you get a largely uneducated population, you know, in very rural areas that don't have access to more sophisticated things, you know, or worldly things. So their world is about this big, right? It's a little tiny world. And the pride, national pride is a very big thing for them because, Jesus, when you got nothing else, what else do you have, right? So, but here's the problem. I was in Russia with a girlfriend who was Russian. I was there for a week. What was it, 2 weeks? It was like a week or 2 weeks. I was actually physically in Russia, and it was an amazing experience. And I will never go back again, ever. It was literally like being in America, except that they all had the Russian accent. So literally, because I was the only American in the room, all I had to listen to the entire time was, "Oh, you're Americans. You think you are so this? Well, let me tell you, Russia, blah blah blah. You know, you Americans. Oh my God, it was wow." I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan. And they're very xenophobic. They don't like foreigners, literally. And they don't like foreigners or outsiders. So if you go to public places, like the museum, there are literally 2 signs posted. One is the fees for Russian citizens to get into the museum. The other sign is the fees for everyone who's not Russian, and your fees are higher. You go, and literally when we went to stores, she told me to keep my mouth shut. Like anybody was ever going to mistake me for Russian, right? And the reason was the minute they realized I wasn't Russian, they would have doubled the price on everything. Like if they'd even bothered letting me buy it. Like that's how like I'm not okay with outsiders they are. And the only reason it wasn't completely 200% obvious I wasn't Russian is apparently because there are a couple of small towns in Russia, like down towards Siberia, in the more remote areas that are full of North Koreans, right? Because North Korea and Russia have a relationship. They've had one for years. They were both communist countries. So there was apparently an agreement at some time in history where North Korea was allowed to send over or let some of their people migrate to Russia and resettle there. So literally a bunch of North Koreans moved into Russia and, you know, set up towns and literally stay amongst themselves. They don't intermarry. So you don't have a lot of Eurasian kids over there. It's literally the white Russians and that little pocket of North Koreans who all, you know, date and marry each other, I suppose, because the North Koreans and the Russians aren't mixing with each other, even though they're in the same company. So the fact that those North Koreans are there and have been there for years, decades in Russia is the only reason that it wasn't 200% obvious I wasn't Russian. So there was always the possibility when looked at me like, maybe she's one of those Korean people, you know, kind of thing. But I had to keep my mouth shut because otherwise they would have doubled the price on everything if they had even bothered like serving me. There were some people who were very, very sweet, but as a whole, the country and the culture, literally like being in deep South United States with all these, you know, redneck good old boys who are all about America, son. Like it literally, except they have Russian accents. So I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of getting better with the Russians. And the other thing is that where I'm at right now, currently, we have a lot of ambulance companies that are owned by Russians who have come over and gotten their citizenship and run these companies. And the problem is our experience with these particular Russians, right? And the ambulance companies, like they're not like taxi cabs or auto sales. Like there's a handful of them. So once you work for one company or you're familiar with one company, you pretty much know who all of them are. Like you know who all the players are. So every single Russian-owned ambulance company, we all know who they are, and we all know about their business practices. And they are shady as hell. Shady as hell. These Russian characters who come over bring all their bad habits because they're so corrupt in Russia. It is so corrupt in Russia. They bring all their bad habits and they try to run their businesses here like they do in Russia, and you can't do that. The stories are legendary about like shit that you just would never, things you would never in a million years try to pull here, like they do all the time, like with complete arrogance and hubris, because, you know, it's just Russia, like we do this in Russia all the time. Girl. And let me tell you how corrupt Russia is. So Russia is so corrupt. If you look online and go through the travel guides, there's two things you should know that are very specific to Russia. One, people never smile in public. And it's not because if you smile in public, it's because people are going to think you're stupid. I mean, that is the saying. But people are like that resting bitch face all the time in public. You do not smile. You do not laugh. You don't look like you're enjoying yourself, because it was for the longest time a communist country with a very McCarthy spy on your neighbor sort of stuff. So if you were too happy, because like, how could you be happy when nobody has anything? It was clearly because you were doing something wrong. So your neighbors, you know, family, friends, people who had a grudge against you would report you to the communist government, at which point you might disappear into Siberia in some prison somewhere for the rest of your life, never be seen again. Right. And it's happened with such frequency, literally in predictability, that it just got to the thing where it's a cultural thing that you just don't show your pleasure outside of the house because you never know who's watching. Right. This is a real thing. The other thing is the people who have cars, the few people who have cars out there that live in the cities, you always drive with cash in your car. All right. Here's why. Are you ready for this? This is how corrupt Russia is. You always drive with cash in your car because the police officers supplement their income by pulling people over and threatening to give them tickets. So the cash is to bribe the police officer out of the ticket, because if you end up going to court over this ticket with the speeding or traffic violation, like it is so much problem and so much work. Like it's literally like too much, and it's worth it to give the cop bribe money to not get the ticket than to have to deal with that. And that is how the police officers supplement their income. So everybody who owns a car knows that you don't drive away from your house without cash in your car. Welcome to Russia. Sorry. All right. Do eclipses strictly take something out, or can it eclipse something into your life with the house the eclipse lands on? That's a great question. For example, if good aspects eclipse lands in the 5th house, can it bring romance in? That's an awesome question. I like that. So yes, eclipses. So, I mean, there's, you know, the simple way of describing it is people often say that eclipses, you know, take things, what does it, bring things in or take things out, depending on whether it's the full moon or the new moon eclipse. And I don't know that and this is just my experience, I don't know that in my experience I've ever seen that rule play out consistently, if at all. I've never experienced eclipses like that. So eclipses, in my experience, will really like overturn the playing board, like shake things up and change the way things are operating and introduce circumstances, you know, that kind of propel you forward, right? And if that requires things being removed from your life, then things are going to be, the dead weight's going to be removed from your life so you can move on with yourself. If this requires bringing, you know, people and circumstances in your life that let a fire under your butt or give you the support you need to move you forward, then that's what it does. So I don't know that there's a predictable way that these eclipses play out, but they're not always about things being removed from your life. At least not in my experience. Maybe this is a consistent experience for other people, but I've never seen that to be a consistent rule. So can it bring romance in? Absolutely. What it can also do is bring in this wave of playfulness and creativity and risk-taking and all the sort of stuff that kind of opens you up, you know, to life and makes you more accessible to potential lovers, you know, and romantic partners. So there's a number of different ways it can play out. It can also mean that there's issues around reproduction, you know, or children. So if you're in the United States in the climate of the current attack on women's reproductive rights, this would not be a good time to get pregnant. So I would strongly recommend investing in some very sturdy condoms and spermicide. I'm just saying. So Yeah, but that's a great question. Absolutely great question. I'm sorry, after my long rant about Russia. All right, folks, we're going to wrap it up soon. Any other questions? This has been a good chat. Thank you. Thank you so much for visiting. Friend has moon in 7th, conjunct the July 13th eclipse. I didn't see the second part of that question. I'm sorry. Let me go back up here real quick. So this was in response to Emily. I didn't see the second half of the question. Some say this is with the eclipse and the Cancer eclipse. Friend has moon in 7th, conjunct the July 13th eclipse. Ooh, Jesus. All right, so let me think about this for a second. So I guess it depends on which side of the eclipse they're receiving this on. So with a Cancer eclipse, because we have a Sun-Pluto conjunction on one side, we've got the moon on the other. So if they're taking the Sun-Pluto conjunction on their moon in the 7th house, one of the things that I would expect, and certainly, I mean, we would need to sit down and actually look at the chart to really get a clear, accurate picture. But one of the things that I would probably expect if it were the Sun-Pluto on that moon in the 7th house is that there would be there would be a major culmination or things coming to a head in a relationship. And one of the big challenges, of course, is not getting into power plays or like high stakes manipulation, right? Because Pluto is a very all or nothing at all planet. So anytime you've got Pluto involved, Pluto wants the whole thing, the whole enchilada. So it doesn't do anything in halfway measure. So whatever its goals are, it will do what it can to attain that in full measure. In the 7th house of relationships, which is, the house of partners and enemies, open enemies. This can be either a strong union that is powerful in terms of effectiveness, or this can be open warfare, depending on how these things are handled. So diplomacy and negotiation become very, very important things in that respect. With that said, that also means, but not with that respect. On the other hand, if it is the moon that's part of this eclipse that is on their moon in the 7th house, then what I would expect is just a heightened, exaggerated emotional response to any stresses or stressors or tension in the relationship that really kind of bring things to a head. And then, of course, we would want to look at the legs of this T-square and which houses they're activating. So first, 7th house eclipse pattern, we're going to take the legs of that T-square in the 4th and the 10th house. So it's either going to come through home or it's going to come through work or like public status. Yeah, so that's your not simple answer to that. All of this to say, we've got to look at the whole chart. All right. So my lovies, it has been awesome. I am going to go sit and get some stuff done and try to stay out of this heat. I'm going to try and find a coffee shop that's open with air conditioning. So again, and I can't stress this enough, this Aquarius eclipse that we're getting, it's getting activated multiple times, and it's literally pushing all the wrong buttons in people, and it's not the people you're expecting. So expect the mild-mannered suburbanite who typically is like nothing to be afraid of, like no neck tattoos, no gang scarves, no leather biker jackets, like none of the hairy, scary stuff, like no stormtrooper uniforms. Like it's not the people we would typically be afraid of that you need to worry about right now. It's all the normal-looking people, because this over bloated sense of self-importance that's not being met is really like coming to the forefront. And remember, whatever we're getting with this, it's not over and done. Once the dust has settled around the initial tantrum or explosion, wait, start counting down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, because there's a second part of this that will come up right behind it. So it will not be completely over until the second act comes in. And I don't want you guys to get caught short with that. So navigate it as best you can. Yeah. And no one ever told me if they had any experiences on July 2nd or 3rd. All right, so if you guys have the interesting stories about anything that you may have experienced that was completely out of the blue or remarkable on July 2nd or 3rd, that's part of this eclipse activation, put it in the comment section below. Again, you can find me on my Patreon page and a much more in-depth look at these horoscopes, and we're starting an Astrology 101 class for beginners and intermediates. And I think that's it. So I apologize I'm not here as frequently as I'd like to be. It's just a whole lot of irons in the fire. You know how it goes. And trying to navigate life myself. If you're interested in a reading, you can give me a call, or well, you can send me an email. So we do tarot readings. We also do astrology readings and all sorts of stuff. And I can send you information about that. Otherwise, just hang out and watch videos, and we'll talk soon. Bye.